In Hearthstone, one long-standing pattern has taken shape. Whenever the developers improve something, it is inevitably accompanied by increased costs or some kind of frustrating trade-off that eventually lead to player disappointment. In this video, making use of my status as a reporter, I plan to bring the mathematician guys into a discussion about what really stands behind replacing mini-sets with class sets. Is this new implementation actually good? Is the increased cost of both the regular and golden versions of class sets justified, considering the significant reduction in the number of cards? To get ahead of ourselves, I have reasons to believe that Blizzard are masterfully manipulating players. Personally, I remain highly skeptical about this innovation. Let's see if the guys can come up with arguments strong enough to change my mind.
Time to rock and roll!
Hello my friends, my name is Bot Mathematician and this is Holomancer.
Also, Chief Investigative Reporter Dora joined us this evening.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
Since the announcement of class sets, almost no one doubted that this innovation would come with an increase in cost. You didn't need a crystal ball or an analytical mindset to predict that.
The only real questions were how far the game's leadership would be willing to go, and how much this change would actually benefit the game environment.
In my view, the value of any in-game option is determined by two key factors: its cost and the gameplay opportunities it provides to players. As for me, both of these factors are highly ambiguous in this case. I suggest we begin our discussion with the cost increase that comes with class sets. Speaking about the outgoing mini-sets, it's impossible to ignore the unprecedented pricing of this feature. Their release was met with overwhelmingly positive feedback from the community, and the main reason was precisely their cost. 2,000 gold or $15 gave players guaranteed access to all the new tools.
In addition, every dollar or gold coin invested provided solid value. Players concluded that the purchase was worthwhile, even if all the cards turned out to be useless, since they could be disenchanted into dust after rotation, or, if necessary, immediately after release. In practice, this was the most efficient way to acquire dust in the game and the most budget-friendly way to expand gameplay options.
Recently, Hearthstone's economy has become so generous that purchasing just a single mini-set for $15 could be enough to obtain all the cards from an expansion, provided you completed all in-game activities. On top of that, mini-sets were extremely flexible and perfectly aligned with Hearthstone's liberal philosophy. In certain scenarios, you didn't even need to spend money or gold on a mini-set and could still reliably obtain all low-rarity cards from packs, thanks to the duplicate protection system.
By the way, it's only fair to admit that despite my concerns, flexibility is something that class sets have inherited from mini-sets. If you choose not to purchase them, you can still easily obtain all low-rarity cards from packs without issue.
Mini-sets contained 38 cards, including 3 class cards per class and 5 neutral cards. From time to time, the developers tried to increase the impact of new cards within classes through dual-class cards. For example, in the Echoes of the Infinite mini-set, this allowed the number of class cards per class to expand to 5.
Without exaggeration, this was an outstanding approach that had the potential to significantly impact the game, but unfortunately, it rarely did, for reasons we will discuss later.
Class sets, instead of offering 3 or sometimes even 5 cards per class, will provide 7 class cards, but not for all 11 classes, only for 4 selected ones. Instead of 5 neutral cards, players will receive only 1, and only as a bonus for purchasing all class sets in full. The disparity is enormous, and it's certainly not what we expected. We will receive significantly fewer cards, while the cost increases at the same time.
Each class will receive 1 legendary card, 2 epic, 2 rare, and 2 common cards. As a result, the total number of legendary cards remains unchanged. The number of epic cards increases several times over, from 1 to as many as 9. Instead of 17 rare cards, we are left with 8, and instead of 16 common cards, we will get only 8. In total, we lost 9 cards, yet the cost increased from $15 to $20, and from 2,000 gold to 2,500. We calculated how much dust you used to get per dollar and per 100 gold, and compared it with what you get now, and the results surprised us.
If we assume that you disenchant all the cards from a mini-set, you used to get 176 dust per dollar, whereas now you get 190 dust. This means the value of the purchase has actually increased. If you buy these sets with gold, the situation is similar. Previously, 100 gold would yield 132 dust, and now it yields 152. Note that in terms of value, purchasing these options with real money provides noticeably more benefit than using gold. Knowing this, you can plan your in-game spending more efficiently.
Guys, let me reveal the key manipulation that allowed the developers to both increase the cost of class sets and reduce the number of cards and the effort required to create them. The answer to this tricky puzzle lies in manipulating card rarity. Essentially, to justify the higher price and the reduced number of cards, the team turned what would have been a common card into an epic one. A very clever, yet entirely predictable approach. After all, you guys predicted long before the official announcement that the team might resort to exactly this tactic to increase the price of the feature. I suggest the viewers see this for themselves.
We know nothing about the pricing yet, but I am confident the cost will increase. The only question is by how much. By manipulating card rarity, it would be entirely possible to significantly raise the price of these sets. For example, if each set contains 2 legendary and 2 epic cards, the price could reach $10 per class set. Unfortunately, our assumption that the price of an individual set would be $10 also turned out to be correct, but we could never have imagined that its value would be this low. In this case, Blizzard have completely lost their minds. This is not just a bad deal, it's a completely meaningless offer. And this is yet another layer of manipulation, as the team creates an illusion of choice.
We have to admit that this is an outright awful approach. Even a minimum price of $5 or 700 gold would have been fair in the sense that buying an individual set would not grant you the valuable bonuses tied to purchasing all sets together. Blizzard used a similar approach long ago with solo adventure chapters. It was still more of a god no to buy the entire adventure at once, but if your resources were limited, you could purchase part of it with gold and the rest with money. Back then, the game did not discriminate against you. Moreover, I am convinced that even with a very generous price, only a small number of players would choose to buy just one set, and this would hardly affect Blizzard's profits. It would simply allow players with limited resources to access at least part of the content they otherwise couldn't obtain. But if the developers are afraid of taking risks, then they shouldn't have created separate purchase options at all. 4 class sets are not expensive enough to justify buying one at the price of 2 without any bonuses. Personally, I would prefer if such a disgraceful offer didn't exist. Players had no option to buy parts of mini-sets before, and they would have managed just fine without it this time as well.
This is Blizzard in a nutshell. Behind potentially good changes, there is always some small detail that significantly undermines the overall impression, lacks logical consistency, and damages the game's reputation. But most importantly, it does not work to increase profits.
You're absolutely right, but I'd like to return to a more positive note. Despite the manipulation with card rarity and the increased cost, the team has not only preserved the value of mini-sets but has actually increased the value in class sets. They even added aesthetic value in the form of a bonus for purchasing all sets at once. In this case, you pay more, but you also receive greater value when disenchanting the full set, and on top of that you get a new skin. It's hard to imagine a better offer, isn't it? This is far more important than minor manipulative marketing decisions. It's also worth noting that the team has partially learned from past mistakes. A similar concept was implemented during the first full crossover, Heroes of StarCraft. The cost increased, and players could buy cards for individual factions. In that case, both the number of cards and the cost increased, but the overall value of those cards was significantly lower compared to mini-sets. After evaluating all the cards by rarity, we concluded that such a mini-set should have cost $16 instead of $20. This time, the team corrected that and provided players with more value than before. The fair price could have even exceeded $20, while still remaining fully justified in terms of value.
To conclude the discussion on pricing, we should mention the golden versions of class sets, which some players purchase to extract additional resources. The price has also increased, from $70 to $80 and from 10,000 gold to 12,000 gold. At the same time, players will receive significantly more value from these options as well, especially when purchasing with real money. If your goal is dust, then $1 will now give you 200 dust. On average, this is equivalent to buying nearly 2 packs and then converting their contents into dust, though even in that case, the value would not be guaranteed. $80 is extremely expensive, but it is the cheapest way to obtain the resources needed to craft 10 specific legendary cards.
So, in the big picture, ignoring the finer details, the team remains committed to a generous philosophy. Unfortunately, they also continue to rely on very greedy and illogical decisions when it comes to the smaller details.
I don't want to act as Blizzard's advocate, but I think it's important to briefly discuss the reasons behind the price increase and why the team resorted to manipulating card rarity. On this channel, we pay special attention to the financial efficiency of in-game options and always emphasize the importance of healthy monetization for the long-term sustainability of the game. Initially, mini-sets appeared to be quite unsuccessful in terms of revenue, since players mostly purchased them with gold, spending very little real money. Accumulating 2,000 gold is fairly easy within a month before release.
It was clear to us that this situation might not fully satisfy the management, and we expected some changes. And those changes did come with the introduction of golden mini-set versions, which significantly improved the financial performance of this option. 2 years ago, we conducted a large study among our subscribers. We regularly surveyed viewers about the most significant shop offers throughout the Whizbang's workshop expansion cycle to determine which options mattered most both for the game and for our audience. According to the results, mini-sets accounted for only 5% of the total contribution, even including the impact of golden mini-sets. Of course, this data does not represent the entire game economy, but it does highlight certain patterns and proportions. The financial performance of this option was not particularly impressive. Moreover, over time, its effectiveness could gradually decline, as it directly depends on the number of highly engaged players willing to pay for the golden versions of the mini-sets.
Guys, if your research even partially reflects the real situation, then increasing the price by $5 or $10, combined with reducing the resources required to create cards, could slightly improve the overall efficiency of this offer. That could very well have been the main trigger for reworking the entire concept. In other words, these changes may serve as a smokescreen to conceal the intention to earn a bit more and do so more efficiently.
That's certainly possible, Dora, but personally, we believe that the mini-set concept had simply outlived itself, and had long required a major rework, primarily from a gameplay perspective. After all, if an option has insufficient impact on gameplay, then its price attractiveness becomes far less important. If you are regular viewers of the channel, you probably know that we never truly embraced the mini-set concept due to its inconsistent impact on the game. A key reason for this lies in the structure of mini-sets. It didn't matter whether players received access to 3 or 5 class cards. These were always fragmented elements that failed to form cohesive synergies and were not capable of creating new playstyles on their own.
The developers essentially challenged players to find use cases for these new tools, but this rarely led to success. Some cards found a niche in the present, some found their place in the future, but nearly half of them never found a meaningful role at all. Useless cards, even if obtained at a very favorable price, become dead weight. They raise the barrier to entry for new and returning players. But there was another issue. Mini-sets were extremely non-reactive. They did not help improve the current state of the meta. Quite often, they ended up further strengthening already dominant strategies while ignoring those that actually needed support. As a result, mini-sets frequently amplified imbalance. Instead of increasing player engagement and driving shifts in the meta, they often made the situation worse.
Just look at the audience satisfaction data from our channel. Over the past 2 years, every traditional mini-set at launch worsened players' perception of the meta. Only subsequent balance patches were able to fix this. It is not normal when new content increases frustration. Note that this trend was broken only by the Heroes of StarCraft mini-set. The satisfaction level reached an all-time high, not because the competitive environment was perfectly balanced, but because the new cards had a massive impact and created a strong sense of novelty. That is exactly how we envision the effect of a mid-expansion update.
Unfortunately, class sets have retained low reactivity. This time, support was given to classes that are already performing well in the current meta. Druid had the greatest variety of playstyles at launch. End of Turn Paladin was one of the most effective decks before its nerf. No Hand Hunter continues to perform efficiently. And only Mage among these 4 could truly benefit from additional support. Despite having 2 strategies, the class's overall win rate is on the edge of competitiveness. Warlock, which is practically on life support, received no support at all. The same goes for Death Knight. The class still needs a bit more help.
However, in other aspects, the new approach has every chance to prove itself far more successful. The new 7 class cards do not look like a set of fragmented elements. They mostly form clear and cohesive synergies. Paladin is a good example, with its strategy built around Silver Hand Recruit synergy. Such an approach, even with a reduced total number of cards, guarantees at least 4 new playstyles, which could trigger a major shift in the meta and immediately allow players to feel the impact of the new content. Moreover, if these strategies prove to be viable and rely on a large number of new cards, we gain a unique opportunity for new and returning players to cheaply and predictably acquire the core of specific strategies. In other words, ideally, by purchasing all 4 class sets, a player could obtain the foundation for 4 different decks across different classes. This could turn class sets into a priority purchase, unlike mini-sets, most of which were optional. As a result, Class sets have the potential to unexpectedly become a factor that significantly lowers the barrier to entry.
Lowering the cost and speeding up adaptation for new and returning players is great, but I think you're overlooking an important detail. No one guarantees that all classes will receive tight synergies. Moreover, no one guaranteed that all 4 selected classes would receive competitive strategies. It seems to me that you guys are significantly overestimating the potential impact of the new cards. At launch, they may indeed create a major shift, but I do not believe that this impact will be sustained over a longer period. On the other hand, even if we do get tight synergies for all classes, this will be beneficial for new players but detrimental for experienced ones, as it will completely limit their creative freedom when it comes to discovering unexpected interactions and combinations. Only a third of the classes receive upgrades. My personal favorites were left out, which means my experience will be minimal, and I'm seriously considering skipping the purchase. The reduction in the total number of cards only makes the situation worse. It feels like the developers are continuing to optimize their effort. Isn't that the case?
You're absolutely right. I would say that the new approach is less creative, and focusing on only a few classes may have a relatively low overall impact on player experience. Disappointment among fans is also inevitable. However, in my opinion, class sets still have the potential to work significantly better than mini sets overall. The experience of recent years, where the number of cards has steadily increased, shows that simply adding more cards does not make the game more fun or more balanced. In this sense, the quality of cards matters far more than their quantity. Personally, I'm pleased that 2026 has become the first year where the total number of cards in Standard is actually decreasing.
Tight synergies also have their advantages. Players will be forced to use as many of the new cards as possible, which will artificially increase the value of class sets. To be honest, over the past few years, I've really missed mechanics that enable non-linear win conditions through the use of a broad pool of specific cards. In my view, class sets fit perfectly within this philosophy. With the right approach, they can enhance the contrast between strategies within classes and highlight class identity as a whole.
Guys, let's move on to conclusions. What are your impressions of class sets?
Replacing mini sets with class sets is not a perfect solution. Moreover, within a system where the game is trying to both improve player experience and increase revenue, finding an optimal formula is nearly impossible. Class sets will not provide a new experience for most classes. They are more expensive, the number of cards has decreased, and their tight synergies significantly limit room for creative experimentation. Despite this, the new implementation attempts to solve certain problems, and that is extremely valuable. The team is aiming to create an immediate impact on the meta, and is using more reliable methods to achieve it. In addition, if the new strategies become competitive, class sets can significantly lower the barrier to entry for new and returning players, which could be extremely important.
Over the past 2 years, most strategies have revolved around abusing the effects of specific cards, and I've grown quite tired of that. Right now, I'm looking for a return to a more classic Hearthstone experience with tighter synergies. Even if this experiment fails, the very fact that it exists is far more valuable than doing nothing. I appreciate that the team is trying to rethink their approach and improve the experience. I'm glad they didn't go too far and managed to preserve the unique value of mini-sets, while even making the new offer more generous and adding unique bonuses. Aside from certain details that leave a bitter aftertaste, we view these changes with great enthusiasm, as they represent an attempt to improve something.
Guys, personally I prefer to remain highly skeptical about this implementation, despite its clear advantages. Although the value matches the cost, I don't like that the team is manipulating card rarity to reduce their own development effort and increase the price. Let's be honest, the team could have achieved much more over the years and delivered a new experience to every class if they had simply made all mini-set cards meaningful, instead of filling most slots with cards that never had any real purpose. Main sets could have included dedicated slots for strategies, which mini-sets would then complete. It's incredibly simple, but instead we ended up with a lot of hopeless cards.
Dora, I suggest we let the viewers decide this debate. Dear friends, we still don't know what impact class sets will have, but which approach do you prefer in theory?
What appeals to you more? 3 to 5 class cards for every class without defined synergy, plus a small set of neutral cards? Or 7 class cards for only 4 classes, but with strong and clearly defined synergy? In your opinion, which design philosophy should win this clash? Mini sets or class sets?
Let us know your thoughts below and join the polls in your community tab. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to support our content and stay updated.
Finally, we want to express our boundless gratitude to our sponsors.
Dear friends, your help is invaluable. We will be grateful for any support.
Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for spending this time with us. We really hope that we will have the opportunity to get in touch in the next video.
Take care of yourself.
And never give up.
Job's done.